everybody. It has been so long. I am finally trying to kind of get in a rhythm of life at this point. Um, so things are still chaotic, of course. My life is never dull. So, anyway, I have decided that, taking that break between season one and season two was really what I needed to just kind of tune back in with myself and my creativity. I have decided to dedicate my, I guess, free time every week to creating an episode for you guys. And I'm really, really, really excited. I'm trying to just let go of trying to make it sound perfect and be perfect and just kind of pick a movie each week that I just feel really compelled to watch and talk about and then just go from there. I'm going to try to spend less time in the editing room and really just kind of give you guys a super authentic episode, even if I stutter, even if I say a lot, which I do, then it is what it is. So here we go. I am back redoing season two. You're gonna get a little bit more authentic Katie, even if it's embarrassing. So anyway, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about, yes, you guessed it, Scream 5.
Hello, Sydney. Remember me?
This episode is going to look a little bit different. I made voice memos when, right after I saw the movie the first time, in between, like the one random day in between the 2 weeks before seeing it a second time. And then I made a little voice memo after seeing it for the second time. So I am going to kind of filter those in throughout this episode because it really does cover a lot of things that I was going to talk about on this podcast episode anyway. And I think it's really cool to see my progression of how I feel about the movie because right after I was like, I like it. Couldn't tell you why. Not obsessed with it. But there you go. In between seeing it the first and the second time, I was like, you know what? I decided I liked it. It's Scream. Of course, I'm obsessed with it. This is my favorite horror movie franchise. It's great. Okay, so whatever I was thinking before is wrong. It's great. Then I went and I saw it a second time, and I took notes, and I just came out feeling eh. That's the best way I know how to describe it. I really just wasn't crazy about it. And you know that I'm obsessed with Scream. Everyone that knows me knows I'm obsessed with Scream. So you would think that just because it's something having to do with Scream, I would love it, right? No. So I think that says a lot that I didn't love it, that I'm not crazy about it, and then I probably wouldn't see it again for a while. I would give it a good amount of time before I would go see it again, and I would definitely go see it with someone else to be like, hey, you have to see it if you've seen the other ones, that kind of thing. Not really to go see it for myself, which is just, it makes me so sad because I wanted so badly for this movie to be great. But we're going to get into that. I talk a lot about that in my voice memos. So this episode is just going to be kind of filtered through my thoughts now and kind of how I've structured my research and my just kind of like the big concepts that I want to talk about. And then kind of just how I feel about it in a little bit more detail and just kind of how I felt about it in detail throughout these voice memos. So let me know if you guys like this kind of style. It definitely took a lot off my plate when it came to planning, but I don't know. So just let me know. Okay, I have just seen Scream, the 2022 movie, for the first time, and I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it was just too choppy. It felt like they were squeezing a lot in. My friend Rachel and I were talking about it felt like there was so much left on the cutting room floor, aka they cut a lot out, so they shot a lot more than they actually put together and showed in the movie. And so because there was so much that we feel like they had to cut, a lot of the other stuff didn't make sense without the pieces that they cut. It felt like they had this 4-hour movie and then they had to cut it down to 2 hours. And so a lot of things seemed jerky. They kind of seemed, forced or unexplained, or just kind of, it just felt like they didn't fit perfectly, like a puzzle. It also feels like they tried to make it so much more different than the rest, while still paying homage to the other ones, that it just didn't hit that sweet spot, in my opinion. But I think I need to process this, because the cinematography blew me away. It was so amazing, and it felt so much more personal. It didn't feel like the other ones, where you're just like, okay, this is a 90s slasher, which is great in its own right. But to me, this cinematography and the shots and the angles and the lighting, and there's a lot of close-ups, and to me that just felt so much more personal. And then there was also a lot of like pans instead of just inserts. So instead of showing the person holding the knife in a close-up and then showing their knife in a cutaway insert shot, you got to see the camera pan from the person's face all the way down their body, and it was kind of in a close-up. So you got to see their arm close-up, and you got to see their hand, bloody hand with the knife close-up. And I think that was a very nice touch. I'm going to start off with a little refresh. So I did a podcast episode about the Scream franchise in season 1, around Halloween time. So if you want to get more of an in-depth history and just kind of overview of the movies and the franchise and kind of my analysis, go listen to that episode. But to just give you guys a little bit of refresh, this is a slasher film. The whole 5 movies, they're slasher films, right? But the first one came out in 1996. So kind of, as you guys can imagine, slasher films have definitely changed from the 1990s to now. And you can see that with movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, just kind of any kind of reboot or sequel that is made 5 to 10 years later, you can tell. So basically, slasher films were really popular in the late 70s and kind of throughout the 80s until about mid to late 90s. And Scream had a really big impact on that and kind of is one of the films that revitalized the slasher film. And Wes Craven is really, really credited for doing this. I think it was a great ode to Wes Craven and his originals. But I also think it was a cool new twist on things, which I also know is why they didn't call it Scream 5. It's just Scream. It's co-directed by 2 people instead of just directed by Wes Craven, because he passed in 2015. And I think it was a really great homage to his other films. Basically, there's a formula that follows these slasher films. So a past wrongful action causes severe trauma. That is the most common horror movie formula. Logline, theme, whatever you want to call it. That is the most common thing that you will see in all of horror movies. This past severe trauma is reinforced by a commemoration, an anniversary, kind of the killer coming back kind of thing. And this kind of coming back or this commemoration reactivates or re-inspires the killer. And in the Scream franchise, these are always different killers, right? Every single movie, you either have 1 or 2 killers that have their own motivation. So this is actually very relevant to the 5th Scream and the ending. A lot of times in the Scream franchise, these people, whether they're a killer or not, they're obsessed with the past Scream killings, right? So in the movie, there's this franchise called Stab, which is reenacting the, quote, in quotes, real life murders that have happened in Woodsboro. So it's very meta, obviously. It's a movie about a movie, and within a movie, there's movies, and they talk about movies, and they talk about rules and formulas and blah, blah, blah. So I'll get into that in a second. But all of that to say, in every horror movie, they talk about the past. Okay, it's been about a week since I saw the new Scream, and I've had time to process, and I've decided that I like it. I think I need to see it again to really embrace it. But I liked it. I liked that it was something new, but it still referenced all of the old ones and really praised the work, I guess, that kind of came before it, like the 4 films. And they had very meta humor, which I liked, where they, still make fun of horror movies and like kind of the formula that goes along with it. It was much more gory, which I liked and I didn't like. I liked it because it was scarier and it felt kind of like I said when I first saw it, like a new creation of this franchise. And so I liked that part. And I liked that the cinematography was amazing. It felt more in this millennium, if that makes sense. Just like the filming and the quality and the equipment they used definitely was different. The score, I will say, is amazing. The suspenseful music, amazing. In the hospital when Ghostface is there and you hear just this amazing, like, tormenting sound that comes from the score when Ghostface is there and is about to attack. Like, amazing. Perfect. I mean, outstanding. In film studies, the most common trope for slasher horror films is that there's typically a young woman, she's alone with the killer, and she must finally kill him in a very dramatic way in the end. And that leads to the trope of the final girl, which is self-explanatory. The girl that wins in the end, right? No one else destroyed the killer. The final girl, one girl, young woman, has defeated the beast, essentially. And in this film, this franchise, it's always been Sidney Prescott, right? She definitely has had help. Kind of as the movies progress, she's had more help with Dewey and Gale Weathers. They always end up helping as well, but it's always Sidney that does the final shot, that takes the final shot, that's always standing until the other people who have survived come in, if that makes sense. So just picture Sidney Prescott alone with a gun, done, bam. She killed the killer. That is a very common trope. Typically, all these women are virgins. And I want to get into the rules of horror movies because this is very, very important in the Scream films, okay? Actually, you know what? I'm going to go into details first. I totally skipped this, okay? It's technically the 5th installment of the Scream film series, except they call it Scream. Not Scream 5, Scream. Because the intention was that it was a reboot of the franchise, which I believe means that there will be more. And I did hear a rumor that they're going to start shooting Scream 2, I guess, the new Scream 2s, in the summer of 2023, I believe. 2023. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I heard. So they are rebooting the entire franchise. The whole point was that they wanted to refer to the past, but they wanted it to be a reboot. And this is what the film is calling a requel, which I will get into. There are rules for a requel that are different than a sequel. This film is distributed by Paramount Pictures. It was released on January 14th, 2022. The budget was $24 million, and as of right now, the film has made $120.7 million in box office sales. It is directed by Radio Silence, which is a 2-director duo, with Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. They're a dynamic duo, so they work together a lot. They directed and worked on the film Ready or Not, which is also a really gory bloodbath horror film, which is good, and I want to talk about that probably during Halloween. And this duo has also worked with writer Guy Busick, who wrote this film with James Vanderbilt. And they made it really important to note that this was a film in honor of Wes Craven. So they wanted to really honor his vision for the Scream films, but they also wanted to change it just a little bit to make it more modern, which I think they did very well. The cinematographer is Brett J. Don't know how to say his last name. It is edited by Michael Aller. The music and the sound is by Brian Tyler. And then the cast is a very long list that I will go through. Neve Campbell plays Sidney Prescott. Courtney Cox plays Gale Weathers. David Arquette plays Dwight Dewey Riley. Jenna Ortega plays Tara Carpenter. Melissa Barrera plays Sam Carpenter. Jack Quaid plays Richie Kirsch. Jasmine Savoy Brown plays Mindy Meeks Martin. Mason Gooding plays Chad Meeks Martin. Dylan Minnette plays Wes Hicks. Mikey Madison plays Amber Freeman. Sonia Armar plays Liv McKinsey. And Marley Shelton plays Sheriff Judy Hicks. So there is this one character that is in the whole movie. And it took me so long to really figure out who she was or like where I know her from, but she is from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She's one of the Manson family members that goes to kill Sharon Tate, but ends up like fighting Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's characters. Her name is Mikey Madison. I just pulled it up. I mean, I just can't. When I see her, like, it's nothing against her personally. I think she's an amazing actress. But, like, since seeing her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and seeing her brutal death in that, I can't look at her the same way. And she just has this, like, crazy face. And, I mean, that's her amazing acting, right? Like, she makes me feel like she's genuinely a crazy person. But she was in this movie, and I felt unwell whenever I saw her. Honestly, I felt very unwell. And if she wasn't, like, super smiley in any scene, I really got the creeps. Which she really wasn't. So, anyway, all that to say, I think the cast is great. And I did like how they allowed a lot of the characters to kind of reference other characters and kind of be, like, be the representation of past characters in this film. I guess I'm saying I liked it. And I guess the more that I think about it, the more I like it. But again, this was also my problem with the fourth one, is that there were too many new people and not enough of the OG people. Like, we all know that Sydney and Dewey and Gale Weathers, we all know that those are the three that are there throughout all of them, right? They're the only surviving ones that were in all four. No, all five. But I missed Randy, and they talked about Randy, and it's like these kids are like kind of distant descendants of the main friend group. So Sydney and her original friend group, like Billy and Stu and Randy, these people were like their nieces and nephews and their sisters and their cousins and their daughters and their sons. And so I liked it, but I just didn't feel that connected to it. And they tried to introduce a new, like, version of Sidney Prescott, and no one is going to beat Sidney Prescott. So, now we're going to get into these rules, okay? It's all about the fandom of stab movies. So there's rules, and there's format, and there's formula, and there is this whole meta idea that the lives that these characters are living are based on the rules for horror movies that they watch. Okay? I think that is the best way to explain it. So, essentially, regular horror movie rules, according to the Scream films, are as followed. According to the first movie, you will not survive if you have sex. You won't survive if you drink or do drugs. You won't survive if you say, "I'll be right back," or "Who's there?" All these rules continue to the current movies. The second movie states that you never ever, under any circumstances, assume the killer is dead. Ever. The body count will always be bigger. There will be more blood and gore. Which, I will say, the second movie compared to the fifth movie, gore is not even in the vocabulary of the first four. It was so much more realistic, but that includes so much more gore. So, yes, in the second one, they brought more gore, and then in the third and the fourth, that continued on. But in all these movies, I'm like, it's not scary. I tell people, this isn't a scary movie. It's kind of a parody about how scary movies are. And so then it's not really that scary. This one, scary. Couldn't look straight at the screen with a lot of the gore scenes. It was a lot. Rules according to the third movie, anyone, including the main character, can die. So in the first and the second, the first movie and a sequel, anyone but the main character can die. In the third one, the main character can die as well. The past will come back to bite you in the ass. And the killer is superhuman. In the third film, the killer will be superhuman. You can never assume that he is dead, or she. You will always have to kill them right in the forehead because they will come back. In the fourth movie, the rules are don't f with the original. Death scenes are way more extreme. Unexpected is the new cliche, so it always has to be expected. It's always the person you most suspect. Virgins can die now. You have to have an opening sequence. New technology may be introduced. But at this point, new technology was like early 2000s, so they had like the Sidekick flip phone. So I don't really know what other technology they're talking about. Maybe the voice changer. I don't know. And you pretty much have to be gay to survive when you're living a horror movie. Those are all the rules according to the first 4 movies. Now, to break this down, a requel, it's a mix of a relaunch of the film series that is somewhat of a sequel that involves information from the other ones. So you have to have seen those to understand the relaunch. It's a requel. I really like that idea. I love anything meta. I love anything film theory, film analysis, film history. I love it. So learning this new term was really cool to me. It is confusing. And in the movie, they joke about how confusing it is where no one understands what a requel is, but that they're living it. I really liked that. And I like these new rules because the killer always does have something to do with the past. Spoiler alert, it was the love interest. It was Sam's boyfriend, Richie, Jack Quaid. And then it was also Sam's sister's friend. So Sam's sister was the first victim. And that is how the killer how I guess Richie and then Tara's friend got Sam to come back to Woodsboro so that they could kill her. So, all these rules are true. All these requel rules apply to the film, and you can see that by the end. So, never trust the love interest because one of the killers was Sam's boyfriend. The killer always has something to do with the past. So the big kicker here is that Sam's biological father is Billy Loomis. So Sam and Tara's mom got pregnant in high school, I guess before the whole Sidney Prescott thing, before Billy dated Sidney, because he died in the end of that. He got a woman pregnant, and then she married some other guy, told him that it was his baby, and until Sam was 13, she thought that her and Tara shared the same dad. When she was 13, she found out they didn't. She found out that Billy Loomis was her father, and that sent her into a trauma spiral of, my dad's a serial killer. Am I going to be like that? I can't stop seeing him. I'm like hallucinating him. He talks to me, etc. Like the devil on her shoulder, right? So then she goes into drugs, and then she leaves, and she doesn't tell Tara why, and blah, 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 because her mom didn't want Tara to find out, right? So the killers, Richie and one of Tara's friends, attack Tara, and that draws Sam back to Woodsboro to go see her sister, obviously. If her sister's been hurt, she's going to go comfort her, stay with her, etc. She brings her boyfriend with her. She brings Richie. And so Tara is considered the first victim, even though she didn't die. She was the killer's first target. And the killer ended up being Tara's friend in her group, Amber, who is played by Mikey Madison. And then the fourth rule is the movie always goes back to the original. So, this film went back to the original because Billy Loomis was the biological father of Sam. And the killers, Amber and Richie, end up talking about their motive at the end, of course. They, replay, summarize, give the audience an understanding of why they're doing what they're doing. At the end, they say that they met on a message board about the Stab movies. So this is where the whole past of the Stab movies come into play. So Sam is involved, basically, her, past is the actual past of the first movie, right? Like, the actual in the real life of the film, murder, right? Billy Loomis tried to kill Sidney and ends up dead. So she's living the real life trauma, and then the killers, Richie and Amber, are in the fantasy world of the fake world of Stab movies. So it's a film within a film within a film, whatever, meta. Also, what I really liked in this that kind of brought back the original is that they're in Stu Macher's house. So where the first one ended, this one ended, right? So Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers they survived and Dewey survived in the first one. And then in this one, it was Sidney, Gale, Tara, and Sam. So there were 4 final girls.
Okay. I saw Scream for the second time last night. The thing is, every note that I wrote that was like, oh, I don't like this, I could come up with an explanation on why they did it and why it was good that they did it, right? So, for example, I was like, I don't really like that that the 2 twins, Mindy and whatever the guy's name is, I'll look it up, they were Randy's niece and nephew, right? So his sister's kids. But I liked it, but I also didn't like that they basically were representing Randy and those 2 characters, but it didn't feel like Randy was kind of split in 2 amongst them. It felt like Mindy really represented Randy, but the guy didn't. Her twin brother didn't. I didn't really see Randy in him other than a little bit of goofiness and kind of like he was like a doofus, kind of like a dumb, kind of like a dumb teenage boy. So that's the reasoning. Okay, so maybe they did split him in 2, where the girl was his like film history buff side, and then the brother was like the doofus boy side of Randy. But again, I just feel like that was me like justifying things that didn't really make sense.
I don't understand kind of how that represented films in the past, because so much of this film is each character and each plot point is recalling something that happened in the first 4 movies, and I like that. I like that that the characters represent the original characters. The first friend group, the original friend group, the original killers, the original people. I like that. But I don't understand why it would be 4 instead of just the original Sidney. I feel like maybe 2 instead of 4 would have been good. Like, that kind of makes more sense, right? That Sam and her sister get to live. But I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me with that. Maybe it's just 4 girls instead of 2 because they didn't want to kill off those characters, right? Like, there could maybe not be a super important purpose to that. But I feel like they're so intentional with everything else that there should be a purpose, a specific purpose to having 4 final girls instead of just Sidney Prescott. But I don't know. A few of my thoughts is that they honor the original characters that survived the other 4 movies, except for Dewey. Except for Dewey. Spoiler alert, he dies. And I don't understand why. Poor Dewey. Like, give this poor man a break. He is off and on with his wife, Gale, in every movie. Every movie starts off with them separated and then ends with them getting back together. I don't understand why they had to get divorced. And I don't understand why Dewey had to become this poor alcoholic, like, old man. I mean, he has, like, the salt and pepper. He's looking really good. He still has the limp. But he's in this trailer and he's watching Gale on TV while she's in New York. And I just don't understand why they had to make him be the problem. Like, when he talks to Gale, you understand that he tried to go to New York for her and for her work. And then he just left in the middle of the night and was like, I'm out. I need to go back to Woodsboro. Why would he do that? Dewey is not the type of person that would do that. He loves Gale Weathers. He would do anything for her. She's the snake. So why is he leaving in the middle of the night? He's not he's brave, He's the, weird, brave, dorky detective guy. Why did he... That seemed very out of character, and I didn't like that. I also didn't like that Gale Weathers became this, super became this super. What I didn't like is that Gail had all of the character development of becoming a really great person. So in the first four, she's just this news person that's trying to get a good story and pump up her ego and be successful as a writer no matter who she hurts. But in this one, she seems so real and authentic and caring. And Dewey seems like the kind of the heartless one, and I didn't like this. I didn't like the dynamic. I didn't like how their characters had developed from the fourth until now. I also just Dewey didn't have to die. He didn't have to die. The killer didn't need to win like that. He didn't need to die, and they don't even really address it at the end. Like, it wasn't this huge plot of like, well, I'm gonna hurt the people that he loved or that loved him. It was just, well, he was just collateral damage. Well, he's freaking Dewey. He shouldn't be collateral damage. I don't understand. I don't understand. I would like to speak to the directors personally. I'd like to hop on a Zoom call, phone call, text. I don't care. Figure out what they were thinking, because that was the wrong move, in my humble opinion. Didn't like that. You see Sydney kind of right at the beginning, and you're like, yes, there's cheering in the theaters. Everyone is so excited. But then she's barely in it, and then she's like a side character. And just seeing those really important people not be so important in this film was just heartbreaking to me. I really didn't like it. But I understand that the relaunch is about a new generation. However, I think the focus should still be on Sydney. I'm conflicted. This is why I made voice memos periodically, because I had to document my thought processes. And I still just don't know where I come out. I think I ended the film at this point in time. I am more angry with the film than I did like it. Then I'm happy with it. I am more upset about what happened, specifically Dewey dying. But just kind of how they treated the main characters. I really wanted the original franchise. I feel like it was advertised as a fifth sequel, and it's not. And I understand why, but I think they advertised it poorly. They should have advertised it as this is the new generation of Scream films. That's what I think they should have done. Anyway, lastly, I kind of dived into a lot of reviews. As of today, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 78% critic and 82% audience, which is fairly good, I would say. And it was a little bit higher when I first saw the film and looked it up. And so I think it's kind of just balanced out to be the audience really liked it, and I don't think critics loved it. It's very half and half when I looked up reviews, I will say that. But when it's negative, when someone gives a negative review, it is like scathingly negative. And I'll read you a few. So overall, it got good reviews. And the good reviews say things like this. Scream is a blast, a solid setup for more to come, by Jenny Nolf of the Austin Chronicle. This is the smartest, funniest, and stabbiest film since the 1996 original, said Wendy Ide from The Observer in the UK. Now, those are pretty good, and I didn't write a lot of them down because they were very generic, and that's basically what they all said, right? Like, solid, good movie, funny, smart, cool, good style, etc. But now, here are the negative reviews. If Scream intended to restart the franchise, things are off to a rocky start, said James of Real Views. Scream is smart. All that's lacking is a plot or a heroine capable of making us squeal, said Charlotte O'Sullivan from the London Evening Standard. That is harsh. All that's lacking is a plot or a heroine, which is what the whole movie is, right? That's harsh. Here's another one from Mark Kermode of Kermode and Mayo's Film Review. Remembering the thrill of the original and just how brilliantly of its time it was, this is just all right. And I think that's kind of how I feel. That I think it's just fine. It's a good movie. It's cool. It's interesting. It's a movie. I don't love it. And I love the others. I don't love this one. Here's another one. It's pretty negative. It's a foolish knockoff that tries desperately to become a clone of the OG film for a new generation, despite not being fresh, smart, or even fully coherent at times, said Candace Frederick of the Huffington Post. Brutal. Brutal. But I do agree, it's not coherent at times. Like, there's just kind of a lot happening. Doesn't always make sense fully. And it doesn't always flow. I don't know how else to explain that. And here's a last review, which I definitely agree with. All that is said in here, I really agree with. And I think it's very objective and very in the middle. It is written by Chris Hewitt from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And he said, "None of this is game-changing, but that's probably not what fans of the franchise want. The new movie understands the appeal of the old ones, and, within that, offers a few compelling variations on a screen." I like that. I think that's a really good summary of the film.
And my initial instinct was always, I wasn't thrilled, I wasn't enthralled, I wasn't ecstatic. Like, the first time I saw it, there were a few moments that I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And that was usually like the introduction of the characters from the movies before, right? The three main. And then like the introduction of Ghostface when he goes, "What's your favorite scary movie?" on the phone. That, like, those were the times when I had chills. I think that these movies have just gone on so long that it can never be perfect. It can never be as much as we want it to be, and it can never be exactly what we want, if that makes sense. I feel like the first one was just like OG, just perfect, and you need more. I think after the first one, you needed the second one, and after the second one, you needed the third. I don't know if we necessarily needed the fourth, and I don't know that we needed the fifth. I feel like I personally needed it, but again, I just felt a little bit let down because it wasn't all that I had hoped, but I don't think that it's possible for it to be all that I wanted it to be. That has been Scream, the 2022 movie, the requel, and I really want to know y'all's thoughts. There is a form on my website where you can send me your thoughts. You can also DM me. You can leave a review under this podcast episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'm really, really excited to be back and recording, and I'm really happy that I came in with this movie as my first episode back. I really hope you enjoyed this. I am really, really, really enjoying being back and planning and editing and recording and just having conversations with myself that you guys are listening to. And I hope that you guys get a more authentic feel from me this season, and that that you guys are just happy with the content that I'm producing, and that I'm having fun with it, because as of right now I am. So thanks for giving me that break, and thank you for letting me come back. And I'm so excited to keep doing this every week. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!
Now if you run into a 5'2", covered with fur, diamond rings and all those things, bet your life it isn't her. Could she love, could she woo, could she, cool as anybody